Hello everyone, good to see you back again. Welcome to my channel's tutorial section. Today we'll be learning how to carve a permanent mandibular central incisor. So let's start. First we'll start with marking of aspects of the tooth: labial, distal, lingual and mesial. We'll mark LI for lingual. Now we'll mark the central axis of the tooth, just a rough guideline, and connect these on the top. Next we'll be marking the dimensions of the tooth. Our crown portion measures 9.5 mm. And now the root length, which is 12.5 mm. Now mark the mesio-distal width of the crown, that is 5 mm, but we'll take 0.5 mm extra. Mark it on the top of the block and also on the opposite. Now we'll cut straight along these markings to the crown length. Mark the labio-lingual width of the crown, that is 6 mm, but we'll take a little extra, about 6.5 mm. Now we'll cut it straight down to the marking of the crown length to make a cuboid. Make straight parallel walls within the marked dimensions and keep verifying the required dimensions. Now we'll mark the mesio-distal width at the cervical, that is 3.5 mm on the labial as well as on the lingual. Mark the notches at these markings as we have done earlier in the carvings, extending them labio-lingually. Keep them very neat. Okay, now we'll carve the labial aspect. Remember, as from the labial aspect, incisal edge is straight and perpendicular to the long axis of the tooth. Grossly, both proximal outline taper evenly from the incisal edge to the root tip. The mesial contact is slightly incisal to the junction of incisal and middle third. It's almost at the same level on the distal too. From the incisal edge to the contact area, outline is straight, and then after follows even taper to the cervical. Let's carve. Maintain the angle of the carver so as to connect the cervical to the contact area in even taper. See the taper achieved from the contact? Always view from the both opposite aspects. Do the same on distal. See, we are achieving even taper now. Also remember, both incisal angles are sharp. Now we'll do the proximal aspect. Mark the labio-lingual dimension at cervical, that is slightly less than 5.5 mm. Make the notches at these markings. Okay, so now remember, from proximal aspect, labial outline is flatter than maxillary incisors with the crest of contour close to the cervical. The incisal edge is inclined to the lingual. That means the incisal edge is not following the mid-axis of the tooth. So let's carve keeping the crest of contour to the cervical. Redefine the midline and start carving. First, closing to the midline. This will allow you to place the incisal edge lingually. Now keep a straight angle from the incisal edge to the crest of contour to develop the labial plane. Carve to the full width of the crown to avoid development of such bumps. Our goal is to connect the incisal edge to the crest of contour. Now slightly contour below the crest. See the contour? We need to flatten the incisal two-third. If you develop these bumps, carve lightly in this angle to make them leveled. Incisal edge should be more towards the lingual. See the incisal edge? We'll shift it towards lingual and make the incisal third flatter. Now the lingual outline. The level of cingulum is slightly above the level of labial crest. Above the cingulum, the lingual outline is labially inclined to the middle third and then joins straight to the incisal edge. We know the incisal edge stays to the lingual and is slightly rounded off. So let's carve. First closing into the incisal edge to make it thin and straight from the incisal view. Start developing the straight outline till middle third. Also keep in mind the incisal is to the lingual. See the incisal third portion? Now develop the concavity in the middle third portion. Here we also need to flatten the labial two-thirds a bit. Maintain the angle of carver to keep it in one plane. Now see the gross outline achieved. Now we'll visualize from the incisal view. From this view, on labial side, incisal third will be wider and flatter. From middle third to cervical third, it becomes less flat and more convex gradually. The lingual side will have equal mesial and distal marginal ridges with cingulum in the center forming the V shape. This is different from the maxillary central incisor where cingulum is towards distal. So let's carve. The angle of the carver is same as that for maxillary incisor, that is from incisal to cervical towards the midline. Do the same on distal side. Now we'll round off all the lingual line angles. Keep in mind the lingual outline too. We just need to round off the line angles. Just confirm the mesio-distal width at the cervical before proceeding. Now rounding off all the labial line angles. Just keep in mind to keep the cervical portion more convex and the incisal third flatter. See the contours now. Now as we view from the incisal, we know that the incisal third is flatter. As we go to the middle, it becomes slightly convex. It becomes convex mesio-distally. Further, it becomes more convex at the cervical. So this part will be made flatter. Like this. This part is slightly convex. Just round off the line angles to achieve the required contour. So that's how we do it. Proceed in the same way. See, we have got the gross shape from all the sides. Just need little rounding off at the cervical. Okay, now this is fine. Now we'll round off the incisal edge slightly. Also, we'll round off the disto-incisal angle very slightly. Just very slight, right? Now the incisal edge, very gently. Now on the lingual side, mandibular incisor don't have very prominent features, just slightly convex cingulum. Here we'll round off all the line angles and slightly develop the marginal ridge in the incisal third portion only, not very prominent but very subtle. It's not a very marked feature, so round off the line angles, smoothen it with a cotton earbud. Remove any irregularities, if any. Now what we'll do is, we'll just carve along the line angles to get the marginal ridge in the incisal third. As you'll carve, you'll slightly develop raised marginal ridges on both sides. Also, you'll develop a raised area in the middle too. Just flatten that. Polish it to even up and to remove any scratches. Just merge it a little bit. So now we can see very slightly elevated marginal ridges. On labial side, in some teeth you can see very slight developmental lines. Again, not very important to be developed. The labial portion is usually very smooth. Just carve very lightly in between to the middle third only. Just blend them using earbud. See the texture achieved? Now we'll proceed to the root part. Verify the marked root length again, should be 12.5 mm. Redefine it. Cut notches along the root markings. Cut straight down from the cervical to the root marking to make parallel walls. So we have carved all the excess to make near parallel walls. Now remember, in the labial aspect, the root tapers evenly from the cervical on both sides with the root tip slightly to the distal. And from the proximal aspect, the root comes almost straight from the cervical to 2/3 length and then tapers. They stay almost parallel to the long axis and tapers at the pecs in the midline. First we'll mark the cervical line, which is higher on the mesial and lower on the distal. We'll mark 3 mm on the mesial side and 2 mm on the distal side. So crest of cervical line will be here and here. Now we'll scribble the cervical line lightly to the crest of curvature. Carve below this cervical line, following its curvature and the taper of root. See? Now carve to the full length to give even taper on both proximal sides. So we are done with the root outline from the facial aspect. Now from the proximal aspect, the outline is near parallel and tapers at the apical third on both sides. Just round off the sharp line angles first. See, this is already almost parallel. Just taper the apical third. And one more thing, from proximal side the root tip follows the midline of the tooth. Just redefine the midline if it is faded. Now carve the apical third. Now the labial outline. Round off the sharp line angles. Okay, so gross outline is achieved. Now we'll do the detailing. Start carving at the cervical. You can see here at cervical, it's convex. It's coming like this. It should have been coming in plane from the cervical line. So carve in straight plane from the cervical line. See now. Now carve following this cervical line straight down. Give slight taper at the apex to the distal. Do same on opposite side. Carve the cervical of the crown to get the taper. Now developing the slight tilt to the distal. Now see the tilt. Now we'll work on the proximal aspect. The root of the mandibular central incisor has developmental depression in between. Just carve it with the Zales carver or the discoid end of the Licron carver to the root length as we did for the canine. Blend and polish the depression using cotton earbud. Do same on opposite side. Now polish the line angles of the root. See here I am using the back smooth side of the carver to polish. Run gently with very light pressure. Now look for any minor corrections. Here you can see slight bulge out in the root. Just flatten it with the taper. Redefine cervical line. Now see, just a little more. Carve a little from the crown portion too. Now we'll view from the incisal. Just need to slightly taper this near the junction of cervical and middle. Let's see now. Just the last thing, to get a little more mesio-distal convexity at the cervical and the middle third. See the angle of the carver blade. Run the carver mesio-distally. Now we are done with the carving. Observe each aspect and try to carve one. I hope this video was useful, so keep practicing and keep carving.